All right. Welcome to lesson 1, we'll call it. Part 2 on the list. Labels, names, they can be useful, but also don't matter so much. And especially with what we're doing, which is overriding the program drive to prioritize words and intellect and academics and facts, to reprioritize the language of energy and our innate feeling and sensing skills, our feeling and sensing faculties that are designed to be our leadership tools within our own personal experience and in navigating the world. And so, this part, we are claiming our tubular vessel. The top chakra or energy center, or just the top of your head, if you don't think in those terms, doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is to offer you the awareness that your top and your bottom, like the bottoms of your feet in particular, but also your tailbone, your root, sacral to, sorry, didn't mean to say sacral there. But it's true, all of your lower energy centers where you really absorb a lot from your external environments, letting them expel through your root, through being grounded underneath you. So through both your tailbone, your root, and the bottoms of your feet, your whole lower body. Those two, bottom and top, those are your both receiving and recycling centers. And you got to be recycling to be available to receive. We're always receiving in the way where we mentioned absorbing from our environments. That's why most of us, where the fucked up stuff came from was being these pure, innocent, highly absorbent, vulnerable little spiritual beings in human bodies that absorbed ways of being, thinking, processing energy from our parents, our caregivers, the people around us, and from the culture, community, society around our immediate living space. And most of history of at least mainstream Western culture has been tormented, tortured, very traumatized. And that has influenced other cultures because we're in an ongoing relationship. I'm like, woo, really going into making some maybe overt obvious, but also it feels like political commentary that wasn't quite my intention. However, why is that coming up? Because it's part of our story. It's part of the stories that we're a part of, that we've inherited, the interplay between indigenous cultures that have a strong or stronger inheritance of this mastery of energy, natural connection through the layers of being, emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and a connection. I'm doing an infinity sign there between the layers, through connection with nature, through connection with the senses. But Western culture, English culture, has claimed power and power over that has seeped into a lot of places. And that influences the collective. It influences conflict and contrast and the perpetuation of conflict and contrast, which we really see exploding in our world today. And it's perpetuated that within ourselves. We are living in a realm of duality where contrast, comparison, conflict, competition is kind of sort of natural. But the point is that I think our soul promise is that we came to experience this, or I can't speak for everyone, but we all came to experience some degree of trauma that arises through the duality at play, which is where conflict comes from. And our way out of it is to be able to hold both ends of the spectrum, which ultimately creates a loop and we hop through. That's pretty much what we're doing here. So duality, above and below. Can't quite see that. Below, the root. As above, so below. I'll just mention that briefly. This is a gateway to high-level alchemical integration, magical work for having power in your own life experience, which means having a stronger influence in the world. Not having power over. It's not a control, but it's being a control in the environment through the level of integrity, energetic integrity that you hold yourself in. And so the step one, or one thing that I'm presenting here in this video, is building relationship with recycling, giving and receiving energy through your top and your bottom, claiming that you are a simple, basic tubular vessel for moving energy. This really simplifies the emotional reality, which can seem, be very extremely complex, especially when we're like groomed to try to use words to organize emotion and to understand them and validate them and rationalize them. We are meant to feel them, and they don't have to have a reason, they don't have to have a name. You do not have to make meaning out of it before being allowed to feel it. Full permission there. That's a big one. And really accelerates one's ability to be distress tolerant rather than distress intolerant, which doesn't mean tolerating abuse. It means no longer participating in abuse. And to not feel your feelings is self-abuse, plain and simple. Most of us have been groomed into participating in a whole lot of self-abuse, in suppressing, not feeling our feelings, holding that energy. Emotion is energy in emotion. We hold it, we store it when we don't have safe, completed emotional experiences. And the completion point is the discharge above or below, the discharge of that energy that gets recycled by the cosmos, by source, and by the earth, which are always, always, always willing to receive and recycle for you. And then that emotional energy, whatever its specific charge is, if you wanted to name it, anger, joy, pleasure, pain, the full spectrum, all of it's moving up and down, to be recycled back into fresh life force. And life force, cosmic, and source life force is infinite. Whereas the life force of our bodies is finite. But the lifespan of these bodies is extended as we embrace this interplay with infinite life force. And we allow this through discharging of emotions, whether it's emotional energy that we can name or label, whatever, whether it's or not, whether we can label it or not, whether we can name it or not, whether it's unconscious or conscious in that way, whether it's created from within. Some of us have a defined emotional center, and we're creating emotions within. We are reacting to life in one of three emotional waves. That's all human design. Some of us don't have that defined and are more absorbent. We're all absorbent. So whether you're creating emotion or absorbing emotional charge from the environment, your job is to let that charge move up and down instead of at. Well, we are mostly programmed through the examples around us and through the perpetuation of these practices to release at. There's a valid reason why I'm angry at that, which then hooks you. It's like you've lassoed that thing and now you're hooked. And not only did that poke a hole in your aura, your energy bubble that's now leaking your limited life force, you've also entangled yourself with that thing. And so there's a push-pull going on. All of that takes energy that I don't think that you really want to be draining. In existential kink, which we play with at the gratitude masterclass, so we'll get into it more there, but having is evidence of wanting. So some parts of us that are comfortable, that have gotten really used to, and it feels homey to be in that push-pull interplay. That's what we've known. And so those parts of us actually do want to stay in the entanglement. And so part of this is really practicing and reprogramming those parts to get on board with the bliss, the relief, the freedom, and all the rewards that come with no longer doing that. And finding it sweet and cute that those parts are kind of sort of committed, devoted to practices of blaming and shaming and complaining and accusing that can feel kind of fun and give us a certain charge, but it is ultimately exhausting. And so feeling, whatever the feeling is. And that was kind of a negative example, but it can also be positive, oh, you light me up, versus I feel so lit up witnessing that. It was even my body language that you light me up. It was kind of caved, and there's a sweetness in that. But then as soon as I said, I feel lit up, my body naturally opened. And what a greater compliment that is. And so that's the kind of thing that we can play with as we become masterful with this simplicity that applies to the complexity. We can reconfigure our perspective and our speech to really own how energy is moving through our tubular vessel and how it's at play in our own bubble and with the external. So you have unlimited, infinite ways of doing this discharge of emotion, of energy, of charge. Letting it leave your system, whether it's something old that was like stagnantly stored in your tissue because you at that time didn't feel safe. You were not feeling safe to complete the cycle. You were not feeling the permission to discharge. And all of that stuff, life is naturally poking and provoking us. It's, this dynamic, reflective experience where the universe wants us to be free, and so does our authentic, deep self desires to be free. And so those parts are conspiring for our freedom. And so life is constantly delivering the pokes and provocation at the stuck stuff. And like a lot of us are like, how dare you? How dare you? Exhausting ourselves further in the bracing and the pointing and blaming and accusing and shaming and the how dare yous. I done it lots. And it, as good as it might feel in the moment or in some ways, it, in my experience, does not compare to the relief and the pleasure of allowing the discharge, even if that means really feeling grief, like heaving grief through my body, or feeling the fire of anger that feels like, I'm not supposed to be this venomous, volcanic thing that's so fiery. My feet, as I'm bringing that energy in, are just naturally stomping, naturally moving against the floor, because that's one way that I play with and that I invite my kids and the people around me to move that hot, hot energy. You are allowed to stomp. And you don't have to have a story about it, but if there's a story moving through, feel free to share it and just be stomping. And that breath that if you watch the meditation, the intro bonus meditation, we did a cannon breath out the top of the head, like a whale discharging as it's about to take this huge inhale and be able to go for another deep dive adventure. Or a volcano exploding because the tectonic plates were shifting and grinding and the landscape is literally transforming, to allow cool quality shifts in our terrain, in our life experience, in the manifestations that we are magnetizing. We have to allow that pressure inside of us to be released. If we keep it in, it ends up being like shutdown, burnout, meltdown, because it fries our system. We end up short-circuiting. Most of us have experiences of like being cut off here, of like holding so much in our body. And then our brain starts looping and trying to figure everything out. And all of it gets up here. And we try and live life from this mental landscape. But the mind functions at its best when it is precursed by emotional discharge, by emotional intelligence, by the allowing of energy to move up and down through this simple, basic, incredible tubular vessel that we are, this channel for energy, not needing to know whether it's ours or theirs. We do get into, in the later videos of this masterclass, more protection. And as we disentangle, we ultimately take on so much less from others. So this is really being responsible for ourselves and having an impact on others through reclaiming our own domain. And this tubular channel is the center feature of our domain. I'm seeing it now like a water fountain. And we're slurping up earth energy that replenishes us. And we can also slurp in cosmic energy and guidance and source energy, God energy, whatever words resonate with you that increase your sense of expansion and openness. Feeling safe and held to receive that. If we don't feel safe and held, that's a key indicator that there is discharge, that there are blocks, that there are layers of protective mechanisms between our own center, which knows, and loves this relationship with the earth below and the cosmos source above, and feel so safe and held in the presence of source, in the presence of the earth. If you don't have access to that, practicing discharging and building conversation that way is a really important way to play with yourself and with life. And I'm looking at the image I have here that I included for you guys. And it's like a person standing feet hip width apart, feet flat on the ground, on the earth, and then arms stretched up like that. And just standing in that stance for 2 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 3 minutes. I invite that for you, whether you are a well practiced energy practitioner or a newbie to all of this. It's those non-verbal experiences of the energetic conversation that are going to be truly impactful. Because energy doesn't speak English, it speaks energy. And our bodies speak energy. And it's about getting into the felt sense of this permission, which words can stroke us there, but it's the energetic conversation that really takes us there, that's breeding that permission within and around us. And as we do this with ourselves, people, things in our lives might notice a shift. It might poke us even more. It might, test us or use us as scapegoats even more. Because the increase in power, in self-authority, in radical compassion is going to provoke others. It's provocative. It's against the grain. It's incredibly powerful. And so the best way to be prepared for that is doing exactly what we're doing. Moving the energy up and down. And when you notice that you are participating in the back and forth or the scapegoating, the push and pull, the poking holes in your lassoing things, blame, shame, tug of wars. Oh my gosh, aren't I cute? Part of me loves this experience, and having that humor and playfulness with your parts really feeds the fire for getting back into the practice of moving the energy up and down. You have infinite chances through your whole life. Whether you take this on now or it, clicks into place later on, or maybe you're inspired, maybe your kid or someone you love or some stranger on the street is suffering, and this comes to mind, and that inspires you to start practicing, to share it with them. This is a really radical tool. Our egos want it to be more complicated. I've said lots of kind of complicated things, but it's like always comes back to the simplicity that we are just this simple tubular vessel moving energy up and down. And we discharge so that there's a more spacious experience, which feels really good. And we do have to integrate that goodness and that havingness, the acclimatizing to this. It is a very natural state, but it's one we might not have visited much, that we might not have much experience with this lifetime or in many lifetimes. And so this tube that we are is a spacious thing. It does get blocked and clunked and clogged up with the stored energy, and then it's tinier pathways for the energy to move through, and allowing yourself to discharge can feel like more efforting is required. Like you're really having to throw yourself into it because all of the momentum is in a different direction of how you used to deal with it, how you're trained to deal with it, how you're comfortable dealing with it. It's worth the leap, is what I'm here to say. And it gets easier as we practice. We're just naturally clearing the channel, and so then the energy moves way more effortlessly, and the moving of energy that way becomes muscle memory, and so it basically, does itself, and our attention is available to enjoy and to witness in reverence for this process, for this vessel, for our life, for the humor and the horror of it. And to really be able to stand holding both in our witnessing and not be so perturbed, which doesn't mean bypassing or not caring. It means not being thrown off center. It means being centered and moving energy this way, which is breeding permission into everyone, wherever they're experiencing the horror, the humor, breeding permission for us to simplify as a leadership quality, as a life skill, as an incredible form of self-love that nurtures and nourishes our capacity for extending ourselves, for attending to external issues, for contributing. And so I leave you with the invitation again to stand with your feet hip distance apart, planted firmly on the ground or the earth, whether you're sitting or standing, and stretching your arms up to 60 degrees in a V, or even if it's easier, better for you to stand with them straight up 90 degrees to really create that tube. And practice stomping, practice that release through your crown, and then also practice receiving, letting the energy in. Maybe it will bump into things where you'll feel some type of overwhelm or some feeling lit up, whether it's positive or negative, releasing again and letting it receive. And as we discharge, there's a stronger capacity for circulation, letting the cosmic, the source energy, the infinite universal life force enter and move through you, letting the earth energy, that grounded, fresh energy, enter and circulate through your system. And we engage, we allow that circulation through enabling conscious discharge, because most of us need to bring our consciousness to the discharge, and we're discharging above and below. And whatever you're doing, if you're shaking or dancing or doing qigong or yoga, You don't have to be standing in that vessel, but with the conscious intention that you are releasing energy back to source and into the earth to be recycled, and that you are receiving through the top of your head source energy, fresh, universal, infinite life force, and fresh energy through your feet or through anywhere in your body, but simplifying the understanding. Maybe it complicates it, whatever your body is doing. The point is that you don't have to be in the tubular shape to experience this or to discharge. But with that intention, consciously, that you're in that relationship above and below, helps to dissolve the entanglements that drain our energy, and that enables the reclamation of our personal power and sovereignty. And I'll leave it at that for this video, and we'll carry on this conversation from here. Thank you so much for being here.